Welcome back to this special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen as we talk with beef producers just like you and me from around the country. You know, a couple of years ago, we were spending a lot of time talking about access to feed and cost of feed, and we have a little different challenges right now. What are some of the challenges facing beef cattle producers from a production standpoint today? Sasha?
Regulations would come to mind on that. I think throughout the whole country, there's some form of regulations that are affecting whether it's, you know, a water issue or land rights. I mean, it's all through the country, and those affect where we can graze our cattle, the kind of equipments we can use, applying fertilizer, manure, and all different kinds of things, and it's all being regulated in different ways.
Absolutely. Craig, from your seat in the bleachers, what kinds of issues are creating some challenges?
Well, you know, we've expanded this herd back, and we're back to 31.2. Like we said before, nobody can produce like the American producers. So we've got a lot of challenges out there, and we've got a lot of competing proteins. So we're going to have a lot of protein to get through, and consequently, one of those issues that I see is where do we move all that product? 96% of the world lives outside our borders. With the new administration, we've heard some issues with trade. That's been a big topic of the rhetoric on the election. So we're going to have to continue to vigilantly address these border issues, particularly when we look at Mexico, Canada, and Japan, because those are three of our largest trading partners. So we're going to have the highest quality product to sell. People want it, but we have to have access. So that's another issue that's laying in front of us right now.
You know, a couple of years ago, we had such a short cattle supply that any four-legged beast that was ruminant was worth a bunch of money. And in fact, talked to some folks that were choosing not even to precondition calves, just loading them up, taking them to the sale barn. It was just, there was no discrimination in the market. Now we're in an environment where all of us are trying to figure out how can we get $20 or $25 more per calf. What are some of your thoughts about how we can add more value to these cattle?
It's really important to build your calves for success. Vaccinate them, castrate, you know, make sure they're weaned 60 days before you move them. Prevent them from illness. Anything you can do to prevent them from getting sick, prevent having to treat them. Every time you treat a calf, you're losing ground. It's affecting the bottom line, and so it's very important to do everything that you can to prevent any kind of illness or anything that's going to set those cattle back.
And Craig, you buy a lot of cattle, so from a feeder standpoint, what would you tell us as cow-calf producers, what can we do to add more value and make our cattle worth a little bit more than someone else's?
Well, you know, there needs to be almost a story there too. You know, we identify a lot of cattle and we're pretty picky. We always have been, but we even get a little more picky right now. We're looking for cattle that they're going to have the proper health, carcass merit, and just performance, because we want to add value. We want to pay the added value to the producer that did all the attributes
Sure.
that made that quality product there, and we take it on, and then we're going to try to capture gain through the system by having higher quality, healthier cattle that really ring the bell at the end of the game and hit the center of the plate.
Certainly, you talked about regulations earlier, this whole veterinary feed directive. Do you think that's fundamentally changing what people are doing and the difference between cattle that are prepared to do well in your feed yard and cattle that aren't?
Well, I think what it'll do, it'll force people to look at how they've been managing and how they're going to manage in the future. So, you know, in my cow-calf operation, I use very little antibiotics because we do so much prevent. Okay, and we go all the way back to in vitro, and you know, we do a lot of work with nutrition and vaccine, or you know, we vaccinate the cows and the calves and everything. So we put a whole program. So it's more of a management program. I think long term that will benefit the industry a lot, because people will be doing a lot of prevent instead of treating. Yeah,
right.
I'm one of these guys that always wants to prevent, not.
An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure kind of concept. Dan, let's talk about the type of cattle. I mean, you're in the seed stock business. What are your thoughts relative to how we can change the type of cattle we create to make them more valuable?
Well, as a purebred breeder, we're always trying to improve our cattle. But the one thing about here in production in the United States is there's one that fits everybody. It seems like there's many different from the high deserts of western United States to the lush pastures of the Midwest. A lot of different type of cattle work in different areas, but on the purebred side of things, you know, we're trying to use new tools like genetically enhanced EPDs, genetic testing, to try and identify those cattle that have better marbling, better carcass traits, those type of things. And then as well, we're seeing increased demand for cattle that are going to be more efficient when we feed them. So those are the type of things that we look for, but as far as cattle type, we just try to make them work for our customers and make sure that they can cover the ground that they need to.
Yeah, you know, the reality is we are still not just competing against other beef, we're competing against chicken and pork, and the advances those folks have made relative to the whole efficiency and cost side of the equation is pretty impressive, aren't they?
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Craig, a couple of years ago, your counterpart sat on this show, Bill Donald, a good friend of mine, and he said, you know, we need to cow up. I'm telling the boys we're going to cow up. And we were in that expansion mode. A lot of optimism, and it was about trying to find replacement heifers and build a herd. Are you equally as optimistic today about the future of the beef cattle industry? What would your recommendation be to some young people who may be watching about the next 3 or 4 years in the cow business?
Well, we definitely have moved the herd back into that category, and we've had a lot of expansion. And we saw that we still are in an expanding mode after this last report, but the quality's out there, okay? The quality's out there. You know, we've been feeding cattle when we were short of cattle, we fed them to heavier weights, and we've seen the carcass weight starting to come down. We do know there's a lot of protein out there, and we know that there could be some issues getting all that product through the system. But again, demand is good because we produce such a high quality product. We see continuing demand for a product and increase in consumption. So I'm very optimistic. As long as we have the quality, the safety, and the taste, we're going to be at the center of the plate. So we're going to keep moving forward there. But we do have a supply issue out there.
Yep.
But as markets adjust, they will find we'll get a balance in here. Sure. And we want to build on demand right now, and both foreign and domestic.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you guys for your insight.